Thank you very much. Yes, my name's Ifor Bielecki. I am probably the least experienced mariner in this room, I have to be honest, but I'm probably the most experienced airline pilot. So it's a bit of a change to suddenly be finding myself standing in front of so many experienced people in the marine sector. I have been part of the marine industry for 3 years, and during that time we built the first long-range autonomous unmanned vessel. It's a vessel called Seabot, which has been operated for the Shell Ocean Discovery X Prize. I probably aren't going to say too much about whether it's won or not, because that's not official yet, but chances are high, let's put it that way. This is a vessel that has got over 12,000 nautical miles range. It carries an AUV as well, which it launches and recovers completely without manned help. And can stay offshore for up to 9 months at a time, acting as a survey vessel. Now, this vessel exists, it works, it's doing what it does all day, every single day. So when people talk about autonomous ships, it is already here. You can already buy an autonomous ship off the shelf, and you can already operate autonomous vessels. But there's a lot more to autonomy than just unmanned or uncrewed vessels. So that's one of the things that I'm here to talk to you all about today. I'm also very fortunate to be part of the IMRS MASS SIG, which is the Marine Autonomy Systems Special Interest Group, and that has been charged at looking at identifying the future seafarer, what skills are required. Now, my background is very much in airline training, and that's why I've been asked to get involved, to bring another perspective into the marine world, just to look at what another industry does. So we are evaluating the functional changes and the skills that are needed, because we all know that the skills gaps appear. It's already been clear. If you started in the industry in 1978 and you get onto a ship right now, it is a very different beast to what it used to be. So how do you maintain your skills? How do you keep up with these things? So really I want to come into, what does autonomous mean? Does it mean nobody on board? So uncrewed vessels, you'll notice the one on the top left, that's Seabot. That's her steaming out for a test session. We also have the Sea Hunter, which is DARPA's very special piece of kit that's flying around the Pacific at the moment, and then an ASV. These are uncrewed vessels. They're available. They're not particularly large. Sea Hunter's quite large, but it's obviously a military ship. But they are there. Or when we talk about autonomy, do we talk about human and machine working together? Every single one of us uses autonomy on a daily basis. If your car has got automatic windscreen wipers or headlights, that is a form of autonomy. It is the vehicle or the vessel making for you and making your life easier. So we have to think about autonomy not just in the case of an uncrewed vessel and removing people entirely from the decision-making chain. We use it all day, every day. Now you're using it in your back office systems. We look at the decisions that are made even on a financial basis. How do you do your crewing, for example? Is it a system that is doing your courses, or is it still being done on bits of paper and a spreadsheet with somebody moving things around? This is what I really want to talk about in terms of autonomy, not just unmanned vessels. And it's to see actually so many people in the room. I go to a lot of conferences like this, and this is the biggest I have seen. I was speaking at one 2 years ago with 30 people in the room, and there's now over 200 people here. It's fantastic. It shows just how interested people are, how much it's changing. So one thing I hear a lot when we talk to people is if marine autonomy is going to be a new Facebook or it's going to be a new MySpace. But everyone knows they need to get involved and they need to look at it somehow. Now, I'm not here to tell you that the VLCCs of the future are all going to have nobody on board. And I have to say, I don't agree with that idea. I don't think that will ever happen, but it will change. And I'll come to this a little bit in the piece. So what are your benefits? Why do you, as business owners or business managers, want to be using automation? So number one, quality and consistency. Repeatability, reliability, and accuracy. Computers and systems are fantastic at doing the same job the same way every single time. People, I have to be blunt, are rubbish at it. So because we're rubbish at it, we are forcing ourselves into to try and be as reliable as a computer when we can't be. But what we are really good at is being a decision maker. And a computer is absolutely useless at it. Computers are fundamentally dumb. Secondly, time savings. Again, people make mistakes. Mistakes take time. They need time and money to rectify a mistake, which impacts on your efficiency. If you want to do analysis of a problem, if you want to look at, for example, engineering system issues or looking at crew and how they're operating a vessel, if you look at the airline industry, you have flight data monitoring systems, a black box, if you will, that's sitting on board. I can tell you every single thing that happened on any aircraft that I've ever worked with, down to exactly how many times the flaps were brought up and down. And we're recording data 256 to 1,058 times per second on every aircraft going through the sky. It's being monitored and checked, not just in real time, but also every 2 days. It's taken out, run through the analysis, which means as a business can then see where your people are making mistakes. It's not saying that you're going to beat them around the head and sack them, but you can see what they're doing, so you can then look at your training, look at how you make things better. Number 3, metrics. Well, everyone who's a manager knows all metrics. We spend our lives looking at, oh dear, have we beaten this percentage point? Where are we? So metrics are absolutely crucial. But the problem with human-derived metrics is that the human element is a problem. Humans are bad at producing data. Machines and systems and automated systems are fantastic at it. You can instantly see what is happening. Oh, quite a bit so. Governance and reliability. Well, this goes back to your quality piece as well. So your governance is so much better because you can see what's happening and you can control your business better. 6, reduced times. You know what's happened. Your paperwork, you don't come to an end of a mission and then have to fill in vast amounts of work. You can have everything done as you're moving along. So you can drive inefficiency out of your business. And reduce costs. I've got to be honest, this is the really big one. If I'm going to move on to the next slide quite quickly. This is a 1949 airliner cockpit. It's a Boac Stratocruiser, British Overseas Airline Corporation. You'll notice, obviously, the nice wicker chair that's sitting there as well, the high-quality chair. But there's 4 people in that cockpit, and they're all busy. So that's 1949. We move to more modern one. Let's start on the left-hand side, 747-100 from 1969. There's still 3 people. Got rid of 1, but you've still got 3. It's all analog, steam-driven instruments, the old-fashioned style. You have a flight engineers panel. The flight engineer was probably the most useful person in that cockpit. Not only were they really, really good at doing the crossword, they were extremely good at watching what was going on, very smart individuals, and were able to maintain and look after the aircraft. Move to the mid to early 80s, you bring in the 777, which is the central one. We suddenly move to moving map devices, radars, TCAS. TCAS is Traffic Collision and Avoidance System. It tells you how not to crash into someone else. It's very useful. But also the really important one is ICAS. This is constantly monitoring the aircraft and the systems, and it warns you if you have a problem. Not only does it warn you, it takes it. But remember, an airliner is a remote operation, and this is where autonomy comes in. Because as an airliner, you can't walk out on the wing and hit it with a spanner. That's not going to happen. So you have to monitor it to have the reliability. Move forwards now to a properly modern aircraft, the 787. We have electronic flight bags on board, an EFB. Now, an EFB is just usually a tablet. It walks on it, has all your information. So instead of spending hours pre-flight, 45 minutes just going through paper, it's all on your tablet. You download it, you walk onto the aircraft, you plug it in, and you go. It makes life so much easier. It's expensive, but it works. So the key for me is we have to learn how to incorporate human skills and machine skills. We as humans are fantastic at We can listen, we can empathise, we can explain, we can influence people, we can negotiate. We're great at that. Computers are rubbish at it. If you're sitting there and you've got a dispatcher trying to kick you off the dock, you've got to go now, and you can't go, well, a computer can't have an argument or a discussion. Whereas what the automation is really, really good at is that it is able to spot red flags. It is able to run through the process, and it will say, look, there's a problem. I can see a problem coming. It allows you to look into the future. So one thing that is clear is that in 2050, seafaring is going to look very, very different from now. Your demographics are changing on who's going to be working. Decision support systems are going to be much, much more important. I'll give you a little example. Again, this is me jumping back to the airline world, but this is a system that's been in place for 20 years. And this is a Lufthansa system. I used to work for them many years ago. And I remember sitting there and they said, well, we have this thing called a cost index. Now, cost index is how fast you fly the aeroplane. It's a balance between the cost of fuel and time. So the faster you fly, the more fuel you burn, obvious. So what you do is generally you fly around a nice, sensible economic speed because it's best. But what the system does, it looks at the passengers, it looks at everything, it looks at the weather that's coming in the future. And it says, what time are we going to land? So it says, look, we're going to JFK. It then looks at the passenger manifest, and it goes, oh, we've got Baron von so-and-so sitting in seat 1A. He's got a connecting flight from JFK, moving to the next place. He's worth to our business £200,000 on his own. We really don't want to annoy him. So what the system then does is it makes a decision and sends a message to the crew in flight to say, go faster. This guy needs to get there. And so it is able to then make decisions with no human input whatsoever to tell you how to go faster. Now, this has been around for a long time. And the question I'm going to ask is, how many people in this room in the maritime industry think that they have systems that are that able to do that and get that sort of information, to be that much more efficient in their own business? Possible. It's absolutely possible. So, one of the questions to industry for me, what skill sets do you have across your own businesses right now? Are you able to say with confidence that you will be able to meet the changing aspects of the workforce as we go forwards, the skill sets required? What are those key skill sets that are going to be needed? And where are the gaps? And then we can all work to do it. Now, that's what we're trying to do in the IMRS Mass SIG, is to really look and understand where those gaps are. These skill sets are going to change, and it depends on the mission that you're going to do as well. So are you going to be using your autonomous ships, or are you going to be using just more automation on board? And the next question is, how can those skill sets be delivered? That's quite a difficult one, because it is, well, it's not that easy. The knowledge gap. So this is from Google X. We're there. Technology's changing rapidly, but humans aren't. And we are creating a gap for ourselves. I look at my daughter, she's 5 years old. She is better on an iPad and on a computer now than I am. And I'm thinking, she's fantastic. I used to be an IT director. And so this is the thing. We have to learn how to upskill our current members of staff as well as everything else. So my message really to you is automation is a lot of hype. There is a lot of hype around it right now. It's a phenomenal tool. It's happening. We're dealing with it all day, every day. But please don't get dragged into the idea that it's only about autonomous vessels. So we have to understand where we're going. But what it does do is that hype does actually wake people up a bit that they really need to do something. Understand that automation is a tool. It is not a goal. It is a tool. It is a tool to make your businesses better and to allow everyone to do their jobs better. And that's the mindset we must always have. And finally, well, manage through education and forward planning. So not only looking at the seafarers of tomorrow, but look at how the kids who are going to come to the industry are going to be going through it. Now, one thing I'm going to talk to you about here, this is a data trace from the Lion Air 737 that crashed fairly recently in Indonesia. And this is just a little idea to tell you that automation can also be very dangerous. And it's dangerous to implement it badly. And we all know what's going on with Boeing 737 MAXs right now. It's hugely in the news. Now, I've got 6,000 hours on 737s as a pilot. I spent a lot of time flying them. Wonderful aircraft. And in fact, I was in charge of bringing in 45 737 MAXs for Monarch Airlines. This aircraft is the Lion Air that crashed. It's just unfortunately Monarch went bust before we got hold of it, so it ended up with Lion Air. So this one's close to home. Now, if you look up here, you'll see, which is quite scary, which is there's an orange line and a blue line in there. Now, one of them says trim automatic, and the other says trim manual. And what it shows is the automatic system was fighting the crew, and the crew didn't recognize it. So what the system was, the MCAS system, if it did, the nose was too high and that you were going to stall, it would push the nose down, and it would put this big trim force down to bring the nose down. But it was doing it against a single sensor instead of two sensors. So the sensor failed, but the computer believed the broken sensor. So it forced the nose down. The crew then tried to recover, but it pushed back down. And they fought it all the way down to here. I've got to be honest, there's a fair few people going to go to jail over this one. It's a terrible piece of implementation by Boeing and by the Federal Aviation Authority. And unfortunately, we've now had 347 people have died because of this piece. That is not acceptable. But that is why the industry, and the marine industry as well, has to that automation has to be done properly and done safely, and you have to think about it in a holistic way. So I don't want to scare you, but please, when you're doing it, do it well. So just to finish up, the IMRS Mass SIG has done a couple of reports that you all might find extremely interesting. Fundamentally, it is looking, the first one was a round table that was held in Singapore in early 2018. Adam, I think you were there. And it was looking remote and autonomous shipping, putting humans in the headlines, making sure that the human element wasn't forgotten. This report is available, and it's a fantastic read, and it is something I please everyone go and have a read of it and have a look. Secondly, there was a roundtable discussion recently in Manila, and this was to look at what the future is going to look like in 2030 and in 2050. So what are the skills that are going to be required? And it was fundamentally looking at different tasks, and it was understanding how clever the machine is going to have to be to replicate that task. So if you think of docking or literally putting a rope over the side, what level of intelligence is a machine going to have to be able to perform that task as well as a human being? And that's how this was broken down and how it's coming. At the moment, this is being written up, and it will be available shortly. Gordon's in the room somewhere, who's the chairman of the Mass SIG, and he will, I'm sure he'll, to anyone who wants to know a little bit more about it. So, finally, World Economic Forum report on future jobs. 3 main challenges for all the managers amongst us. How do we shift workers from prediction rated to judgment rated? So prediction rated is the human element where we look at the world and we make predictions based on our experience. Move into an automated system where you have massive amounts of data around you. You don't necessarily have to predict. What you're doing is taking vast amounts of information and then using your judgment based on that information. So it's a different mindset, and that is where we need people to think differently. Secondly, as I said, we've got to look at the rate and the direction of change and how we adapt to AI. AI is not here yet, and it isn't around. It's coming, and it will come. But when we talk about automation now, please don't think it's AI. Don't think that the computer's making decisions. A computer is still fundamentally dumb. If you put rubbish information in, you will get rubbish information out. So the level of intelligence isn't there, but it is coming. So we need to be able to look at how we do it. And finally, how do we develop management processes and SMS systems, etc., where we make sure that our humans and our machines are working together properly, not fighting each other in the case of the Lion Air 737. We need to work together with the machines. So thank you very much for listening and letting me start up. And I hope I haven't gone over my time too badly. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much.
I would like to refer back to the image that we saw of a 2 or 3 year old with a tablet looking at probably cartoons, or what parents thought are educational videos probably, and think about the skills that that new generation will have. We know that currently, even shipping companies, when they promote their cruises, they market that for baby boomers, X, Y, Z generation, millennials, because our generations, different generations, they have different skill set, different interests, different motivation, everything. And on my way here, I read an article published in Scientific American, which was analyzing the impact of technology and introducing technology in earlier age. And that article came up with the conclusion that there is a drop in concentration and attention among people exposed to technology at earlier age. Because the way that technology really works with our brain, that it speeds up the processes. It does not represent the process as it actually is, and that there are those about it in much more professional and better way that I can probably explain. But what it really says to us is that we need to our assumption on the fact that new generation that is being exposed to technology is going to be better with technology and is going to be better in decision making. We need to question that assumption and think, is that early introduction of technology, as the science currently says, is not going to actually further challenge our ability to deal with technology? And looking at human factors, complacency and over-reliance on technology, yeah, we understand that. But what about situational awareness? And what about that ability of a human being actually being able to concentrate and keep attention and make relevant decisions? So I don't know if you have any comments on that, or maybe that just can prompt some of the, as it was encouraged at the very beginning of the conference, just to question those assumptions, to think about what are we really going to be dealing in the new generation of seafarers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I do have a few thoughts on certainly things like attention spans. Yes, it is absolutely true that children nowadays, they do have a shorter attention span. You're right, there's plenty of evidence to show this. One of the key, though, and one of the benefits of automation, and when you work things, situational awareness is a big one. So if you're on a bridge lookout, for example, or something, it's a long time, you have to keep your concentration. You have to be disciplined out all the time. But this is where technology comes in. Now, again, I'm going to jump back to aviation. So if you're in an aircraft doing 8 miles a minute, screaming along in one direction, and you have another aircraft coming at you 8 miles a minute, 16 miles a minute closing speed, that's pretty fast, and it's over supersonic. The human eye is not going to be able to see that in time. It doesn't matter what you look at. Yet, and it's exactly the same in the aviation world as it is in the maritime world. The law is that your primary means of lookout and collision avoidance is the human eye. It's nonsense. You can't do it. It's impossible because you're moving too quickly. So what has been developed, and you're seeing this in the maritime world as well, then use tools. You use automated tools to help the human and alert the human, so that actually you can be having a cup of coffee, or you can be doing something else or doing paperwork, and that you can start to rely on the technology to actually help you and to assist you in things like lookout and for tasks. Remember, one of the things that automation is good at, I didn't mention it, I probably should have done, is the 3 Ds. Anything that's dull, dirty, and dangerous. That's what automation is good at. So dull is where you have, that's the problem with attention span. So I completely agree, but I also say I think you can use the technology to very much help you on that front as well.
Ifor, thank you very much. Thank you. A big clap for Ifor, please.